Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, September 26th, 2017, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. It's episode number 43 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy. I'm Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I got my comrade in gaming commentary here with me, the man you know as the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Holding up cool-looking action figures. Mac, it's been a couple weeks since we did this. How have you been, man?
Oh, man. It's been crazy, Mr. Nice Guy. Let me give you, and as well as our viewers and listeners, some highlights.
Let's hear it.
Number one, I may have gone on at great length about how Mrs. the Mac was taking care of an astronomy festival.
Yes.
It's over and done and was fantastic and amazing. The weather didn't exactly cooperate for a couple of the stargazing activities, like we did have sleet and, no blank sky to look at. But, apart from that, everything else, there were tons of things. There was this really cool one, Mr. Nice Guy, which I think you would have really enjoyed.
Oh, yeah?
Where we had a bunch of people from the political science department.
Okay.
And debate about like a bunch of different potential laws, like who gets to own comets, asteroids, things like that for when we can finally mine them. A really fun one was like should we make laws about who can send out transmissions to contact aliens, which led to the inevitable conclusion that perhaps Justin Bieber's Baby is the key. That song Baby is the key to intergalactic peace.
I'm lost. I'm already lost. It
was just
the aliens intrigued me though.
Mm-hmm. But I think you would have really enjoyed it. It was fun, debate format, and just really enjoyable because everybody had kind of a good time and nobody got too serious.
That's sweet.
But it was really good. On top of that, Mr. Nice Guy, as you know, the last time you came to visit, you took your Nintendo with you back.
Yeah, I had to, man. I had to.
No, I understand. But I did get my AVS in the mail,
Nice.
Which is an HD Nintendo, so that's awesome. I also did finally get my pre-order. My pre-order's starting to be filled for my flash cartridge that hooks into my PS1. So I'm pretty excited about that too. So I'm just good stuff all around.
Dude, that's fantastic. I'm glad you had a couple weeks that have been awesome. Guys, I had something going on a week ago, a comedy show that prevented us from doing the show. Mac had something going on 2 weeks ago. Now we're back. We're going to try not to miss as many weeks, if any, going forward. But life happens. Thank you guys for being so understanding. Mac, I had a really interesting weekend, dude. I actually had a couple gigs, and meaning stand-up comedy gigs. For those of you who are regular followers, you know that I do that as a side hustle. And one of my retirement gigs, Mac, was at a retirement home. Would you believe that?
Really? A retirement home?
Yeah, dude. So someone contacted me and said, "Hey, I own this company. I won't say the name of the company, but he said I entertain the elderly because they deserve to laugh too. You're a clean comic. Would you like to do this gig?" I said, "Sure, I'll do this." So I drive out to the place, and the guy, he's a really good guy, but he calls me, and I've never been to this place before, this retirement home. Why would I have been there before, right? I'm not looking for places to live. I'm not that old yet.
You're scouting locations for your grandparents.
See, there you go. It could have been that. But anyway, I get there. He texts me. He's like, "Dude, I had an emergency come up. I'm not going to be able to make it." And I was like, oh, boy. So I only have to do like 30 minutes, but I have no idea how to set up the microphone. Luckily, I have enough basic tech knowledge. I was able to figure it out. Plug the mic in, get ready. No one's there to introduce me. So I get up, and let's say that the guy's name is James, who runs the company. So I get up with the mic, and I start talking, and the old people are like, "Where's James? You're not James. We thought James was going to be here," because he's there every week when they do these comedy shows, right? He starts it off, and then he introduces the comedian. And I was like, "I'm not James. clearly, but I'm going to do my best, you guys. So they kind of settled down. And I have never met a rowdier group of elderly people. They were sweethearts, don't get me wrong. But the lady in the front row, 90 years old, flirted with me the whole time. It was kind of cute. She's a very, very nice lady, you know, grandmotherly. And then at one point, the craziest thing that happened during the show, and then we'll get into the gaming news, is this lady came downstairs. And I won't say what her name was, but she comes downstairs and she immediately starts cursing at everybody in the room. And, you know, just, what the are you doing? And Mr. Comedian, you need to bring your over here and stand in front of me so I can hear the show. And there was this old guy there at the show. He was probably 6'5". And just doing crowd work, I had determined that he was an engineer. He had flown planes in the military. So he was like a tougher guy, bigger guy. And let's say the lady's name was June. He was like, June, you sit down and you shut up. We're just trying to enjoy the show. We don't have to do what you say. And everyone was like, calm down. So at one point, this lady, June, we'll call her, keeps yelling and talking during the show. So this guy gets up and grabs her by the wrist. And this is like a petite, like 5'1" lady. And I swear I thought he was going to pick her up and throw her through a window. Like, it was one of the scariest moments of my life. I'm just there to tell jokes, Mac. I'm not there to defend and be security. So I had to bring one of the staff members over to stand between them for the rest of the show so that they did not murder each other. It was crazy. I never knew old people could be so wild. That was the craziest part of my week, Mac.
WWE Golden Girls edition.
That's right, dude. They would have been beating each other, their dentures out of their mouths, and it would have been wild. It would have been crazy if it had gone down. But Mac, on that note, I say what we do best, and we hop right into the gaming news. What do you think, man?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
And I'm not following the chat. I know there's probably people in here. I haven't pulled it up yet on my PC, but welcome to Two Nerds in a Pod. And this is episode number 43. So we got a lot of really interesting gaming news and commentary today. The first news story, let's start with this one. This one really was very fascinating to me, and it deals with game piracy. This is on GameRant.com. It says, over the years, one of the biggest debates within the video game industry has been over the impact of video game piracy on game sales, with some even suggesting that anti-piracy measures cause piracy. Now, a recently revealed study has concluded that there is insufficient evidence of video game piracy impacting negatively on video game sales. The study, which was carried out by eCores on behalf of the European Commission, took an in-depth look at the piracy of media in general, across movies, television, books, and games in the countries of the UK, Germany, France, Spain, Poland, and Sweden. Yeah, technically this study wasn't done in the US, but I still find this interesting. It says, overall, the study found that 51% of those adults consulted admitting to illegally downloading or streaming content, with 18% admitting to doing so with video games. However, in spite of these figures, the report did not find, quote, robust statistical evidence of displacement of sales by online copyright infringements. Bottom line, guys, this study says that people who pirate games, and I'm not advocating this necessarily, or condemning it. I'm not taking a stance, but it's saying people who pirate games, who pirate media, are not affecting the sale of the media. Now, why is this important? And then I'll let Mac chime in if he has any thoughts. This is important because people always present the argument that if there are people who are pirating games, it's taking money out of the pockets of the content creators. Additionally, there's gray area like ROMs and things like that, games that you can no longer purchase being able to be downloaded. Mac, I'm not even going to ask a specific question, but I want to get your thoughts on this study, if you have any. I know this is something that probably you're pretty familiar with, this topic, right?
Yeah. So one thing that is particularly fun about this whole thing is that the European Commission, whoever, anyway, they commissioned it. They poured about, I think it was $500,000, or was it 500? Yeah, I think it was $500,000 into putting this study together. But when it came out, they more or less suppressed most of the information from the study, with the exception of one little bit that wound up getting basically cherry picked. And when you're thinking about stuff like video, like movies, that is the one, movies and television. That was the one thing that actually showed really any impact from piracy, but definitely not video games. So it was really quite funny because people had to go looking for the full results of the study. They were not readily released. Instead, it was just this one line. It was just like, yes, Hollywood is having trouble because of piracy, but music, no. Video games, no. And it's not too surprising, but there it is. I find it amusing, of course.
I'm a strong believer that people, especially gamers, support companies that they want to support, right? Like, no one is pirating their favorite game. I don't think, anyway. I don't know. I'm not really big into it. But I'd imagine that if you have a favorite game, a favorite franchise, that you appreciate what the developers are doing and you're willing to go pay for it. I think, and I'm not saying that this is right, but I think that people who are pirating games that they want to try. You know what I mean? That they're like, I don't want to pay for that, but I want to try it out. I don't want to get too much into this, but I think that there are benefits to the promotion of lesser-known games that result from piracy. But we won't get into that today. You guys let us know your thoughts in the chat on if you think this study is accurate or not. I wish it had been done in the U.S. as well, but it is what it is. Now, Mac, this next story is probably my favorite story of the week. And the reason why is because I think this might be a game that you and I could play together on PC. So let me read this story. We'll see what you think. I know you're not a PvP guy, but you might make an exception here. So this is on Polygon.com. It says, Epic Games caused a stir a few days ago by announcing Fortnite Battle Royale, a spin-off of its long-in-development early access title Fortnite. The standalone game is based on the smash hit PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds and the Battle Royale genre that it helped make famous. The project is awkward for a number of reasons. First, Battlegrounds is built on the Unreal Engine, a platform which it licenses from Epic Games. Also, Fortnite Battle Royale will beat Battlegrounds to consoles with its own free-to-play version in just a few months. Those factors and the similarities between the two games has Battlegrounds developer Bluehole crying foul. They were actually thinking of suing, I believe, if you guys have been following this story. The latest version of Fortnite Battle Royale went live on Epic servers just this morning, so I decided to give it a try, the author says. After a few hours in game, I found an experience that is strangely familiar, but with a few unusual twists. So, to kind of just summarize this, Mac, are you familiar with PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds? Just from Twitch, maybe?
Yes.
Or...
I have not been living under a rock.
I know, dude, but I got to make sure. We haven't talked in 2 weeks. You never know. You might have had amnesia. Okay, so you're familiar with that. And then Fortnite is basically like a tower defense type game. And they added a mode that is very similar to PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, to PUBG's Battle Royale, where you can, and it's free. That's the thing. That's why I think it'd be a good fit for us to play together. Because we don't got to pay for it, and then if one of us doesn't like it, we're like, oh, we wasted our money or whatever. So, bottom line, guys, this mode is being accused of copying the mode that was put out by PUBG and may potentially result in a lawsuit. Now, I don't know if I don't really have strong opinions on this, Mac. I just want to know, would you give this game a chance? Based on what you know of PUBG, do you think that you'd be down to try some Fortnite Battle Royale? It's kind of co-op if you think about it. I know you're not a PvP guy, but it's kind of co-op because we would be cooperatively PvPing, if that makes sense.
I would be willing to try most any PvP style game if I knew I had somebody I could trust. I'd be willing to give it a shot.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have to do this. I actually have it downloading on PlayStation 4. If I like it and I think it's going to be worth our time, I'll let you know. We can do the PC thing and try it out.
Perfect.
Very good. Well, guys, we got a few more news stories, and then we'll move on to our next segment. We actually have a few changes that we're going to do in the show today, but we won't get to those until we get to them. The next news story deals with our homies at Valve. It says Valve has yanked and maybe, Mac, I don't know if you're familiar with this story, but maybe you can educate me on why this is important, because I didn't quite understand, but I could tell it was important. It says Valve has yanked 173 games from Steam as part of what is believed to be the largest single-day removal of games in the PC platform's history. As reported by Polygon, this is on GameSpot, by the way, all of the expelled games were made by Silicon Echo Studios, and it sounds like there is a good reason for their removal. The YouTube video below from Sid Alpha talks about, quote, asset flipping games that that use pre-made Unity assets to release games faster and less expensively. Valve previously referred to these titles and those like them as, quote, fake games. Some of the games were reportedly sold by a connected company called Zonatron Productions, and in July and August the company apparently released 86 games on Steam. That would be about 10% of all games launched on Steam during those months. Many of the games, which included titles like blah, 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 blah. So here's why this is significant. It says, what was the problem here, it seems, is that people could pick up the Silicon Echo games on the cheap and then use them to collect Steam's virtual trading cards and then resell those on the gray market. As Polygon explains, trading cards don't fetch much, as little as 25 cents, but with enough sales, the figure could grow substantially and developers could get a take. So Mac, I think I get it now that I've read it again, but are you familiar with this issue or not really?
A little bit. As a matter of fact, I think the most noteworthy one is probably of these sort of asset flipping games is definitely Digital Homicide, who wound up a while back trying to not only sue the YouTube reviewer Jim Sterling, but also tried to sue Valve for access to the personal records of basically everybody who gave their asset flipped piece of crap games a bad review on Steam. Of course, naturally, that didn't go much of anywhere. So I'm not too surprised that they decided to screen out a bunch of games that just basically use Unity flipped resources. But the doing it in order to get Steam cards and trade them was actually entirely news to me.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that. And I guess I get it because it sounds like these developers are putting out games that are very cheap to make, and then additionally they're getting a take of these trading cards being flipped. I don't use Steam much, so I'm not familiar with these Steam trading cards, but apparently that's a thing. So okay, very good. Well, we'll keep moving on, and I have one last news story. I kept it short today, short and sweet. Just got the stuff that I thought was really interesting. And Mac, did you have any this week or no? I assume that I only had news stories this week, right?
No. Go for it.
Sounds good, man. So this last one is from Polygon, and it deals with, of course, I don't know why I said of course, but it deals with Star Wars. It says, today's big Star Wars Battlefront 2 trailer wants you to know one thing. It's a bigger game than its predecessor. As John Boyega mentions in this 5-minute trailer with a helpful infographic, Battlefront 2 has more than 3 times the number of locations, not total maps, but overall settings, and vehicles of 2015's Battlefront, not to mention a single-player campaign mode that the actor himself asked for in the original. Note that Boyega is comparing launch day details. Star Wars Battlefront added a lot more in 4 premium DLC launches that followed and became a much different game in the additional free content updates and changes since. It's an unusual way to market this game, but any sports gamer knows their favorite franchise does this every year. Quote, that thing we said was so great last year or 2 years ago? Well, let me tell you, it's nothing compared to this. In retrospect, the first Battlefront was skimpy, launching as a multiplayer-only title that leaned on players' love for the Star Wars franchise more than bringing it to life on their PC or console. So guys, even John Boyega is on board with Star Wars Battlefront 2. I will say that I liked Star Wars Battlefront as a game. As an experience, though, much too short. I don't think I'm going to be picking up the second one. And Mac, that's what I have as far as news this week. We'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, now we're moving on to the next little segment that we like to call video game history. So we've taken a look at the things that are going on in video games around us right now. But what about those things that came before? Now, I have to say that in the time that we've, since we've last broadcast, that there are a lot of items that we could talk about. And sometimes when I'm preparing this segment, I do specifically and intentionally leave things for later because I intend for us to be doing this for many years to come. And we don't want to hit all of the highlights of any given week. Yes. In the first year of the Two Nerds in a Podcast.
Right.
We want to save some things for later. So while there are some things I could say about Mega Man 30th anniversary or various other things, we're going to leave those for some other time, and instead, I'm going to focus on something that took a little bit more research because I wasn't especially familiar with many of the games in this pathway, but that nonetheless is historically very relevant.
Nice.
And specifically, what I want to talk about is first person shooter games, but specifically the kind of evolution of destructible environments.
Yes.
So in the past week, but years previous, so specifically focusing on 1995's Gen War, which was released for the Sega Saturn. This is arguably kind of the first first-person shooter, say that 10 times fast, with destructible environments. Now, notably, you had bombs, you had explosions and explosives that would actually make craters, which was kind of a big deal because previous to that point in time, and even for the most part afterward, most developers didn't dedicate very much processing or memory to destructible environments, because that was just more things that you had to code, more things that the console or computer had to keep track of, and therefore that would make it more difficult to squeeze better performance of the title overall.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, you can see this even in games today. Mr. Nice Guy, Destiny. Destiny is a popular title. How destructible is the environment in that game?
Not at all.
Not at all. I'm thinking about, I've recently been playing some Left 4 Dead 2 with a friend, and the environment's somewhat destructible, but not especially so. You just think for a minute, if you shoot a window or if you try and blow something up, does it have an impact on all of the things? And in most games, the answer is no, because people don't want to dedicate that kind of extra power. So Gen War kind of was had some of the best destructible environments for many years until it was showed up in 2001 by a PC game called Red Faction that was released. Now, again, I am going to issue a caveat here that neither of these games do I have that much experience with, but I do know that Red Faction is very notable for its highly destructible environments. As much as we had some increased destructible environments in Gen War, Red Faction dialed that to 11. You could blow up and destroy so much stuff in Red Faction. And we arguably haven't had that many games that have put a focus on destructible environments. Unless, of course, you start talking about the entire genre of games that comes about as a result of taking the malleable environment idea to its eventual conclusion with sandbox games. So even though it might seem a little bit interesting, sandbox games, I feel, owe some of their deepest roots to some of the destructible environments and the emphasis that was placed in previous games such as Gen War and Red Faction. I'm not saying that without these two games we would lack sandbox games in their entirety, because arguably there were people working on that kind of stuff before, but it's really a good example of convergent evolution in video gaming, that we have these ideas merge and move together to make the genre that we now see in a day, in this day and age.
Yeah.
So destructible environments, sandbox games, everybody kind of borrows their ideas and puts things together in their own unique ways. But I think it's very clear to see the roots in both Red Faction and Gen War. And with that being said, there is one other thing that I have to mention that happened this past week, years back. That was in 2003. A little-known company called Valve started this digital distribution platform that's known as Steam. I've never heard of it. Yeah, no. I mean, I've never heard of it. I wouldn't blame you for never hearing of it. I mean, it's kind of this esoteric thing.
We definitely didn't mention it earlier in the show.
No, we certainly didn't. But yeah, I mean, arguably, Steam, I would say, is the thing that has changed video gaming the most in the past 15 years. I
Really
would say,
interesting.
yeah, I
I
would say
could
the
see
past
that.
15. I definitely put the past 15 years as being Steam being the biggest game changer in video game history. But anyway, that's all that I had for video game history this week. And in case I have gotten any of you interested in looking back at Gen War and Red Faction, when you do play through those, let me know what you think about it. Maybe I'm going crazy. You could be right.
Now, dude,
Over to you,
you
Mr.
actually
Nice
did
Guy.
get me interested in it. The only thing is the accessibility aspect, because I don't
Mhm.
know anyone who has a Sega Saturn. You know what I mean?
Yes, so emulation will be our friend in that
And
pursuit.
we've established that it doesn't hurt sales, so we're good to go there. From our earlier discussion, it doesn't hurt game sales. Cool. Well, did you have more gaming history? I didn't mean to cut you off if you had more stuff.
No, not at all. That's just kind of what I wanted to throw out there. Those
Awesome.
two bits.
Sweet. Well, guys, it's time for our next segment, and we're going to do something a little bit differently. You know, in the past, we've always done the viewer question of the week. But for a lot of reasons, we decided to switch it up this week, and we'll see how it goes. We're now doing a segment that doesn't have a name yet, but we'll call it for today the timely topic of the week, where we share a segment that's a news story or a gaming topic that has to do with something that's current, that's relevant, that's important today at this day and age in gaming, and then we get your opinions on it in the chat. Mac and I do some back and forth. We give our personal opinions. So, for this week's story, I have chosen this article on Kotaku, and it deals with the voice actors strike that was taking place up until recently. So we'll go ahead and read this article. The title of it is "Striking Voice Actors Didn't Get Everything They Wanted, but it was a start." After a year of striking, countless career sacrifices, and some thorny negotiating, the video game voice actors of the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, also known as SAG-AFTRA, finally came to a tentative agreement with the 11 struck game companies last night. I think that there's some typos here. Without some big demands met, it's easy to consider the tentative agreement a disappointment. Looking at the specifics, though, it's clear that SAG-AFTRA's small victories indicate steps forward in an industry that certainly isn't known for its progressive labor practices. Last October, I'm not going to read the whole history, but here is some of the meat of the article. It says, unlike other actors, video game voice actors often do not receive residual payments or a fixed royalty rate after the game sells a certain amount of copies. SAG-AFTRA argued that if a game sells millions of copies, voice actors ought to share in its success. Specifically, for every 2 million copies sold, voice actors should receive an extra $825 with a cap of 8 million copies. In other words, the most a game company would have to pay out would be $3,300 per voice actor for the most lucrative games. The argument went that when games like GTA 4 amassed $600 million in their first 3 weeks, perhaps starring actors like Michael Hollick should make a bit more than $100,000 over 15 months, especially when publishers dole out tens of millions in bonuses to their executives. There's a lot more in this article. Here's the bottom line. Here's what they ended up negotiating and getting. It says SAG did not get that extra $825 per 2 million copies sold, their leading ask in negotiations. Instead of residuals, yesterday's tentative agreement has SAG-AFTRA video game voice actors receiving a 3% increase in base wages, plus some decent bonuses. Quote, $75 on the first session, up to a total of $2,100 if you work 10 or more sessions. So I have some thoughts on this, and I have some thoughts on striking in general. I don't really have a specific question other than, Mac, do you think this is a victory, or do you think that the voice actors should have pushed harder to get their actual demands? What do you think? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but just based on what we've been reading. So
Well, this is the hard bit, because at the end of the day, the voice actors can only be on strike so long. You know what I mean? Now, not all the time. Let's be clear here. Striking isn't always standing in front of the mill, holding a sign and soaking scabs, as we've been led to believe by newsies. But striking is just refusing to do the job, and hopefully, with enough of your coworkers being able to force a specific discussion about something that you want. Now, I mean, I don't know how very well or very not well the everybody was getting paid or how regular their work is, but any loss in revenue definitely hurts. And while I would have liked to have seen more offered, that they reached an agreement where the voice actors get a lot more for their work and their time, I can't fault them for saying a year's long enough and pushing forward with an agreement, even if it's modest gains. Do I think they should have held out for more? See, that's what I'm getting at. I would like to have seen them made more gains, but I totally understand if they didn't feel like they could continue to hold out for more.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And that's what's frustrating to me is I feel like, yes, they should have held out for more, but I also get that they need to eat. You know what I mean? And I also feel like the people who they're negotiating with probably say, well, they're not going to hold out forever. So to use kind of an analogy from my world, occasionally a group of comedians will say, hey, we don't like the way that we're being treated by this venue. We're not going to perform there anymore. We're going to take our talents elsewhere to a place that will, 1, treat us better, 2, compensate us better, right? 3, be more respectful in some cases as well. So anytime that happens, there's always a group of other comedians who are either oblivious to the quote-unquote boycott, 2 who just don't care, or 3 are choosing not to participate. 4, maybe they're newer and they're excited that now they can get more stage time, right? So it's really, really hard as a contracted employee to send a message to a bigger entity like this, because there's not really a shortage of talent, you know what I mean? And granted, there are varying degrees of talent, but let's say that these voice actors were still on strike. Eventually, these people would have just said, you know what, we're just going to use different voice actors, right? Because there's other people out there who would do a sufficient job of voice acting in the games. So I'm glad that they were able to negotiate some things. I wish they had held out for longer, because really, I can't believe that they're only getting, I mean, $3,300 is a lot of money, but on 8 million copies of a game being sold, the voice actor who plays a significant role in the success of the game is only getting $3,000. That's crazy to me. So I wish they had held out for more. That's my opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our topic of the show. Now, I know a lot of you guys in the chat are agreeing with us. If there's anyone who disagrees, I'd love to hear your stance as well. But for now, Mac, I'll let you take it over to the next segment.
All right. Well, the next thing we like to do is a little interactive segment of the show we call Kick or Kickstart. Before we dive into that, I will point out that not that long ago, I discovered somebody else using in their show a kick or kickstart type thing.
Oh, really?
But we got to it first, so I don't feel bad about saying kick or kickstart.
Now, don't say who it was, but I'm curious. Is this a big podcast or
no? No, it's not. It's not a big one, so it's perfectly reasonable to assume that we've arrived at the same conclusion, completely independent.
Right.
But it is, But we were there first, we were the first to print, which is
right.
Which is what matters. So I've got 2 that I want to mention here, and just as a reminder how this works, I'll go ahead and put some links to some Kickstarters. We'll talk about them, the virtues, the vices, and then at the end we'll give our ruling whether we think they should be kicked, as in kicked out of here, they are not worth our time, or whether they show promise and should be kickstarted. And so, with that in mind, I wish to offer the first one, which is a little less of a serious Kickstarter and a little more of a what were they thinking bit of a Kickstarter. So this is called Eternal Legend, right? So, for those of you who are navigating to this, it is billed as a stylish, creative, and funny Metroidvania game, which of course tickles my fancy.
I love Metroidvania.
So of course I take a look.
Yo. Sorry, I won't roast this. Finish what you want to say.
Number one, the guy's asking for it's roast time now. Number one, the guy's asking for $100 to make it. Number two, the first thing this person has done on Kickstarter. Number three, the video has absolutely no information about the thing, and it's just a clip. Okay. Oh no, he's changed it up. Okay, so when I first saw this, because it's been a little while, it was a 30-second thing, and it was just him like making some noises at the camera. It is now 6 minutes and 40 seconds long, and it is not much better.
What?
Slightly better, but not much better. And number three, there's basically nothing about this project, any of the presentation, any of the information that should make anyone feel as though this person can properly manage a project of any size. So it's quite... So it is what just how... I don't know.
This is hard because crazy. I wish that there was a way. People are going to listen to this episode on iTunes afterwards, and there's no way that they're going to be able to see how ridiculous this is, like the people who are here live. What's the name of this again? So if Eternal Legend?
Eternal Legend.
So I would encourage you that if you're listening to this after the fact, that you go Google Eternal Legend on Kickstarter so you can see what we're talking about. Because this is crazy. Sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
Yeah. So with that being said... we're talking cautionary tales, if you will, there. Let's go for one that is more of a serious contender. This one is called Selling Sunlight, a Wandering Merchant. So, for starters, a modest goal being requested, 14,000 plus a little bit. This also happens to be the first Kickstarter being created by this particular group of people, but it is, of course, much better. So the particular thing that really grabs you about this as you take a look at it is that all of the animation and the worlds and backgrounds and things like that are based off of initially watercolored designs.
Yeah. Which
makes for a really, we've seen a lot of cell shading in video games. We've seen a lot of, a lot of various different types, but watercolors is not an animation style that I've seen very much, an aesthetic that I've seen very much inside of video games. But it makes for a very fun sort of character, sort of video game here, presentation. So this operates very much in the way that you would expect merchant games to be, right? It's an RPG. There's trading. There's haggling. There's a little bit of some battle in there. You've got people you can work with, and you also have stats that you can increase as you operate. So with it all being said, it actually looks kind of cool. The minimum buy-in, if you're interested in getting the game, a digital copy of the game, happens to be $12 or 10 euros, because this is a company based out of the EU.
Yeah.
Oh. And they're looking at at having something to put out there in May 2019. So in spite of my initial concerns about such a low goal of just a little over 14,000, I am encouraged by what I feel to be a very reasonable estimated delivery date. They're expecting May 2019 to be done, which, in spite of how much they may be asking, which I think is a little low for what they're promising, the amount of time is certainly much more in track with what we normally see in crowd-funded games and how long it takes for crowd-funded games to get complete. Mr. Nice Guy, any thoughts? Anything that jumps out at you?
Yeah, I immediately look at it and think that it's not my type of game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that I can't appreciate what they're doing. And it's interesting to me because anytime people give out personal info, I feel like it adds a level of accountability to the project to lead me to believe that they really are devoted to it. And I mean, these people have their pictures and their full names on here. You know, I feel like Kickstarter is often such an anonymous platform where people can use an alias or, you know, their first name, which is like a generic, you know, first name, not generic, but a common first name. And so if there's no recourse, you know, for the people who give money if it doesn't get done. But these ladies who are working on this project have given out their names. And so that
and their Twitters.
And their Twitters. And I mean, Twitter can be brutal if someone's mad at you. So that leads me to believe that at the very least they have good intentions, right? Good intentions don't mean anything. I wish they would have put something more about their history. Looks like they've worked together on comic books and stuff, but I don't know if they've done any successful projects. That said, I think this looks impressive, and I have my vote when you're ready for that.
Well, as we know, I have one very big requirement that needs to be met, and that is I need a playable demo. I need proof that you, as a designer, as a group of designers, artists, sound designers, that you can get your stuff together and that before you come asking for my money, you can show me some work. And guess what, Mr. Nice Guy? There is a playable demo.
Yay!
And I have played it, and it's pretty good. It is certainly bare bones, and they very much say that. They're like, you know, it is a bare bones playable demo, but we've got all of the working pieces of the game coded. So you can rest assured that we can deliver a product. And so with all of this in consideration, I have my deliberation, and that is I say kickstart.
I do too. I say kickstart it. I think it's very clear that these people have good intentions, and I like that they have a cost breakdown as well of what the money is going to in a percentage form. So I'm gonna say kickstart it, and I want to hear what you guys say in the chat.
So now's your time in the chat. Go ahead and put in your vote, whether you think it should be kicked out of here or whether it should be kickstarted. And for me, just the fact that I feel like even if I'm not entirely certain about the money aspect, the timing goals are just so realistic in comparison to many others. And the playable demo just shows me that they've got their stuff together and I can probably expect to see something. So kickstart it, I shall. But that's all that I had for kick or kickstart. Mr. Nice Guy, over to you, sir.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for my favorite segment of the show. It's a segment called the Dummy of the Week. A segment of the show where I talk about someone who did something stupid, someone who did something idiotic or downright dumb, and I make fun of them. Now, because we have a few extra minutes, I actually have two dummies that we're going to talk about today. And the first dummy, Mac, you look so surprised, man. You look like a kid in a candy store.
Oh, I'm excited. Yes.
A kid on Christmas morning. So the first one comes from CBC. This happened in British Columbia. It says, go. No, it literally says that in the article. RCMP have fined a driver for playing Pokemon Go behind the wheel in New Westminster. Now, that might not seem that weird because we know who doesn't play Pokemon behind the wheel. That's just what you do. That's just an unwritten rule of Pokemon Go. I'm kidding, of course. It says, an officer caught the distracted driver at 10th Avenue and 6th Street on Monday just after 8 a.m. The 51-year-old woman was fined $368 for using an electronic device. Quote, an officer noticed she was looking elsewhere, stopped her, and she basically told the officer she had been in the midst of playing Pokemon Go, said Captain Daniela Pansakar. Quote, a little bit off the norm for sure. RCMP were patrolling the area on Monday morning as September is Distracted Driving Month. Panasir said officers issued 20 tickets in just 90 minutes. I'm scared to ever drive in the UK now. Pokemon Go, a free explain what Pokemon Go is. I'm not going to read that. But I feel like in this situation, if you get pulled over for distracted driving, just say, yeah, I was distracted. Don't say I was playing Pokemon Go. You know what I mean? You could omit that detail because chances are she said, yeah, I was playing Pokemon Go. And then the officer said, what was that? And then she had to explain it. And then the officer was like, okay, now you have broken the law and wasted my time. So you're definitely getting a ticket. That was very dumb. Also, I get that people of all ages play games. But I feel like if someone is driving while playing, you'd think that it'd be someone younger. This lady's 51 years old. I'm not saying you can't play Pokemon Go when you're 51, but I think you should know not to play it while driving when you're 51 years old. That's my opinion.
This does lead me to think of something else. Often, distracted driving, as it's called here in the States, or texting while driving. I mean, of course, Pokemon Go falls under the umbrella term of distracted driving, is often depicted as something that, like, young kids do. We're talking kids who have just gotten their driver's licenses. Everybody looks to be under 20 in those advertisements where they're like, don't drive distracted. And this all could have been settled if you weren't fiddling around on your phone. But it does make me wonder. I wonder if distracted driving is much more common among older people than under younger people, because I'm with you. I'm like, I would not have expected somebody who I expect to have a better head on their shoulders.
Exactly.
At 51 years old. But it does make me wonder and just kind of challenge that assumption in my own head. So I'm going to have to look into that. But I don't know if it's just young people.
It's all people. It's all people that do this, Mac. Everybody does it. Everyone's doing it. It doesn't make it right, though. Guys, we move on to our next dummy of the week. And this guy was arrested for firing a gun at a TV. Let's go ahead and read this article. It took place in Petrolia. A man is accused of firing a pistol at a cell phone and video game console belonging to his girlfriend's son during an altercation at his home Sunday night. State police say Robert M. Myers Sr., age 49, fired 2 more rounds into the television in the son's bedroom at the family's home on Jamison Street in Petrolia. No one was hurt, but Myers was arrested and charged with reckless endangerment and disorderly conduct. The incident was apparently motivated, police said, by Myers' anger with the son of his girlfriend, Tanya Parsons. He allegedly got his .45 caliber pistol and took the son's phone and Xbox 360 outside, according to a police affidavit, and fired multiple rounds into the items. But he wasn't finished, police said, and this is redundant. It says he went back into the house and fired 2 additional rounds through the TV in the bedroom of Parsons' son. So at first I thought maybe this guy was playing virtual reality and just accidentally grabbed a real gun instead of a fake one. But then I realized that it was an Xbox 360 and there's no VR capability. So really, he just felt like destroying a console that was a generation old and ruining the kid's day. I don't know what else to say about this. I think that you could have probably saved some ammo and just dropped the 360 out the window and not endangered anyone. Just look out the window, make sure there's no one walking, yell something out like 4, like you're golfing, and then toss it out the window. There's no reason for a gun to be involved in this. Really, really stupid because he could have gotten it done without endangering people. That's why he's the second dummy of the week. And Mac, unless you have something to say about that, I'll turn it back over to you, man.
No. Well, we'll move right along to the last segment of the show, which we call Legalese. Legalese. So we talk about, in this segment, things that maybe have shaped where we are today, things that could shape where we go in the future, or sometimes just good cases that explain some of the concerns that we face in digital media. So this particular one is something a little bit near and dear to my heart, and it involves Comic-Con. Something that many of us love have attended, or at the very least are just familiar with. So, Mr. Nice Guy, have you been to a Comic-Con before?
I actually haven't. I'm embarrassed, but I've never actually been to one.
No worries. I have been for the both of us. And I consider it doubly because not only did I get to attend and walk the showroom floor, but I was also there to assist. I was helping a booth. So I was technically a vendor.
Nice.
So vended and attended. So enough for the both of us. Well, the one thing that you may or may not be aware of is that there's a difference between Comic-Con and Comic-Con. So it's a lot more clear in print, I promise. But the term Comic-Con, the hyphenated term, versus the unhyphenated Comic-Con. So there happened to be a few years back, Salt Lake City did a Comic-Con, and they used the unhyphenated term, the unhyphenated form of the term Comic-Con, which normally requires trademark payments or licensing payments being paid to the San Diego Comic-Con.
Really?
Yes, it does, because they're the ones who trademarked the unhyphenated Comic-Con. So other places tend to use the hyphenated comic hyphen con. But Salt Lake Comic-Con did not use that. Now, what became interesting about this, and I'm sure it had nothing to do with it, is that the Salt Lake Comic-Con's first year and their first showing was attended in such high numbers as to rival the San Diego Comic-Con's best performing years.
Interesting.
Yes, and so when I heard about this this dispute going on, it was only after the numbers had been released that the Salt Lake Comic-Con wound up being such a rousing success. Now, of course, just because it follows in time doesn't mean that it is this way, because they would have waited until after the Salt Lake Comic-Con was finished in order to throw their lawsuit this direction. But I'll just leave that where it is. So what is quite funny about this is that the San Diego Comic-Con had sued Salt Lake Comic-Con for not paying for the trademarked usage. At which point the Salt Lake Comic-Con's producers responded by requesting that there be a removal of the trademark on account of genericide. Now, in quite a ways back during the legalese, I mentioned the various ways in which intellectual property expires or is removed from you. Yep. And genericide is the way in which trademarks are removed. That, of course, is where your brand is so well recognized as whatever that item it represents, that it is just considered to be the generic term. I do believe trampoline is probably one of the most famous examples.
Good example.
Trampoline's just the name for all trampolines, as opposed to just a specific brand of jumpy, springy things. So, what is quite fun about this is that their countersuit is that, well, sure, but it's really a generic term when you think about it. Come on. So that is actually currently being decided, is this question as to whether or not Comic-Con, hyphenated or unhyphenated, happens to be a generic term now. And if the Salt Lake, the Salt Lake organizer owes money to the San Diego Comic-Con person. So I will say that that this may not quite be ready to be genericided yet, because San Diego Comic-Con convention lawyers submitted to the court a consumer survey that found that more than 80% of customers believed Comic-Con to be a brand name and not a generic name.
That's ridiculous.
But let us just point out that is a consumer survey conducted and presented by the people who have the vested interest in that. So I'm not saying they're cherry picking. I'm just saying
they're cherry picking.
They may very well be. So This will be ongoing, and we'll see. I'll update you guys once it's all done. But it is quite interesting to see. This could be now. I can't think of any genericide in trademarks that I have witnessed or paid much attention to. So this could be the first in my lifetime, at least, that I've paid attention to, and I can hardly think of a better thing to become generic, of a better trademark to become generic than the idea of a comic or media convention.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
so I know where my feeling is on this, but we will see what the judge has to say. I will point out that there are over 100 Comic-Cons currently being held in nearly every US state. And Comic-Con is the hyphen or the unhyphenated name is often used interchangeably in reporting as well as in discussion of the events. So I feel like it could go this way. And I know that for most of us, we probably didn't think Comic-Con was a trademarked brand name as opposed to just a generic name. And you're a clever guy, Mr. Nice Guy. So I'm just saying we should now hold Mr. Nice Guy as the standard for whether or not something is one way or the other. What does Mr. Nice Guy say? He says it's generic. Bam, it's generic. I'm just saying we could do worse for standards.
As our first witness, we bring in Mr. Nice Guy. Mr. Nice Guy, what do you think about this? I think it's generic.
I would pay to watch that movie.
Rule in favor of the plaintiff. All right. Well, that was awesome, dude. Seriously, man, the viewers love that. Someone said in the chat this is their favorite segment of the show. I don't know if you saw that comment. So
I did.
I'm serious. It's very fascinating to hear this stuff. So, Mac, that's our show, you guys. This has been Two Nerds in a Pod, episode number 43. We're 43% of the way to 100 episodes. Now, before we go, we like to do one last mini segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about what we've been watching and what we've been playing. And it's interactive because we want to get your thoughts in the chat of the cool, nerdy media, comics, DVDs, games, movies that you've been watching and playing, because we're looking for more nerdy stuff to check out as well. Mac, do you want to start us off?
Absolutely. So in addition to playing some more Nintendo, now that I've got my HD Nintendo, my AVS here, I also not that long ago picked up a HD Sega Genesis that I got sent over from China.
Yeah.
Oh, did I mention it before?
Well, no, I was listening. I'm a nerd, so I was listening to our last episode that's up on iTunes.
Gotcha.
And you had mentioned you were going to get one, so.
Yes, well, I did get one. It plays my Flash cartridge perfectly, and it's quite awesome, and it's outputting HD, which is really, really enjoyable. So I've been playing a lot of that. I did also mention that I've been playing some Left 4 Dead 2 with a friend of mine, my next-door neighbor, actually. He's been making some time coming over, and we've been playing Left 4 Dead 2 together, which, when we can find some time. As for what I've been watching, Mrs. the Mac and I haven't had much time to watch much of anything, but we did watch The Good Place, which was fantastic. I don't want to give anything away that wasn't already given away by the end of the first episode, and it happens to be this. It's a television series starring Kristen Bell, or is it Kirsten Bell? Well, her last name's Bell, and she is dead. And the first scene, she is in the good place. She's died and gone to the good place.
This is on Netflix?
It is on Netflix. It is currently, the first season is on Netflix. And as it is shown before the end of the first episode, she's not supposed to be there. So somebody's made a mistake. And I will leave that be. I will just mention that my favorite character in the whole show is Chidi, who at various points in time, I feel like at any point in time, Chidi is me. Like, there'll be something, he'll react to something, I'll be like, in that moment, Chidi and I were the same person, which I do enjoy. But anyway, yeah, give it a look. Let me know what you think. I had a great time. great time of it. What about you, Mr. Nice Guy?
As far as what I've been watching, I have been watching more Madam Secretary. Really into that. I think we're on the last season. It gets even more intense, man. And I know you had watched a few episodes, but there's so much stuff to watch. So I've been watching that. Really been watching a lot of comedy specials. In fact, anyone who's a fan of Jerry Seinfeld, he just released a new stand-up special on Netflix. And it's a big deal. One, because he's one of the best comedians of all time. Two, because he hasn't released a special in probably 20 years since Jerry Seinfeld comedian. Or what? No, actually, what was it called? I can't even remember. But he hasn't released one in a long time. So this is his new one. And it is very, very good. I'm about halfway in. Watching a lot of comedy specials, and that's pretty much it. Now, as far as what I've been playing, and then I'll let you get into your stuff, Mac, I've been all about that Destiny 2. Destiny 2 is a phenomenal game, and I feel like so far it's everything that the first game should have been. So we have a clan we started. It's called the Nice Guy Nation. Anyone who's a Destiny 2 player and wants to roll with us on PlayStation 4, or if you're on other platforms, go ahead and check us out on the Destiny app, the Bungie app. You can join the clan. We'll accept your request. And then I've been doing old school games, of course, on the RetroPie. Donkey Kong Country 3. I've been doing a lot of vertical shooters, 1941, and stuff like that. And then tonight I'm going to play that Fortnite Battle Royale mode on the PS4 and see how it is. I just downloaded that. So that's it for me, Mac. How about you?
All right. Well, I already did mention
you
playing,
did.
But I will read some of the things that our viewers are watching and playing. So a quick plug for Star Trek Discovery. Early reviews here say it seems unlike earlier series, but it was very intriguing and very alien, which I might just have to. I've been really holding back because it's only available through CBS All Access, which is, you pay per month for the privilege, and I think there are only like 2 things on CBS All Access. So basically it feels like, do I pay this money to watch Star Trek or not? Or the new Star Trek. So we'll see. But let's see. We've got Netflix with 4K content like Death Note. We've got some playing of Uncharted 4, Lost Legacy, Horizon Zero Dawn, and a comment about how they look amazing in 4K. Galvatron, with regard to your old television, just let me know where to pick it up. I'll pick up the old one if you're all done with that. So yeah, but that's what we've got in the chat. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Star Trek Discovery is on Netflix outside of the US. Well,
interesting.
Now I just need to grab a VPN and set my region to the UK so that I can watch it on Netflix.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's what we've got.
Awesome. Well, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to episode number 43 of Two Nerds in a Pod. We'll be back here, same bat place, same bat time, same bat rhymes next week. If you enjoyed the show, hit us up on iTunes, Two Nerds in a Pod. Also, hit us up on Twitter at Two Nerds in a Pod. If you have questions, hit us up on Gmail, twonerdsinapodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you guys here next week, 9 p.m., twitch.tv/2nerdsinapod. Keep it nerdy, my friends. Deuces.